This is Stressed. I'm Kerstin Lindquist, health coach, author, and Emmy award-winning TV host. I've committed to helping people reduce stress through impressive health science, attainable mindset change, and biblical truth. Let's have a real conversation with zero judgment and endless solutions that you can use. You aren't alone. You can do this. Let me help you reduce stress and make room for rest. Hilary Russo is a trauma-informed holistic practitioner, coach, and health and wellness journalist. She is one of only 1,000 practitioners in the world certified in Having techniques. Hilary is also an international speaker and health and wellness TV expert. Her globally top-rated podcast, Holistically Speaking, is inspiring conversations of trauma to triumph through health, healing, and humor, and what it takes to be a happy and healthy grown-up. In this episode, we talk about moving out of stress with do-it-yourself Having techniques. Also, what you can do for 2 minutes every morning that is scientifically proven to improve your day by over 20%. And how she has overcome her sleep challenges related to sleep apnea. Take notes. This episode is full of inspiration you will want to write down. Let's go. I am thrilled to be able to welcome in a true old friend. Not that you're old, Hilary, but that we have known each other for a very long time through QVC. Hilary Russo, so blessed. Here's how this actually happened. We did work together at QVC for a while, but I threw out that I was starting a podcast and who would be great to talk about stress on this show. And she raised her hand right away. And then I fell in love with her podcast as well. You have an amazing podcast, top 1.5%. Congratulations.
Thank you. I have such a loving adoration for Holistically Speaking, but also, yes, looking back to how long we've known each other, I believe I was on air for the first time when you were on air, like the first month or two at QVC. So that is a pretty long relationship.
Yeah, we're talking well over a decade. The other similarity that we have, and a reason why I wanted to have you on, is we both are graduates of IIN, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which changed my life. And I know it did yours as well. Talk to me a little bit about your background and how you went from there to here.
You know, it is a really amazing story, because how I got into the IIN world was not even being a health coach. I was hired originally to be one of the educators for their module, for their online program, which we both took. And that was back in like 2015, 2016, where they brought me in. And I remember thinking, Kerstin, I was like, this place is so amazing. It smells like Whole Foods in here, because their headquarters is in New York. The people are so nice. They invite me to lunch. I'm hanging out. I'm doing all the broadcasting and all the different modules. And I thought to myself, I'm going to be back here. And they did invite me back. I did a number of modules for them within their online coaching program, which since has grown by leaps and bounds. Like, they have so many programs now. And I thought, there's something here. There's something here that's very different than anything I had ever dealt with before. So at some point in time, I went back and said, I'd like to become a health coach. Can you tell me more about that? And part of that was due to the fact that I was on the show called Daily Burn 365. It was the first online streaming fitness show. And I had a health coach on that show, in addition to being on the program on camera. And I thought, this is really neat. This is that link between the doctors and the medical world and the patient, that giving somebody a liaison, somebody that can help them, a guide by their side, as we learn in IIN. And I thought, I think I want to do this. I want to be somebody that helps others on their journey. And I went back, I got certified. And the funniest thing was, I was watching myself in some of the videos because I was in some of the modules as an educator. So here I am taking the class and the curriculum and a number of the modules. I'm watching myself. So that was the in to IIN.
There you go.
It's amazing.
It's great. Absolutely a remarkable program. And we've talked about this often, my viewers and myself, about how just going back for yourself, just going through that program to teach yourself about the main components of wellness and how to better yourself is a huge piece of it. But you came out of it and have made a just amazing name for yourself in your techniques, which are different than I think anybody else is doing out there. Tell me what you're doing.
So I was trying to find my niche after getting out of graduating from IIN rather. And I thought, what do I want to do? Do I want to stay in nutrition? Because ideally people learn about health coaching. They learn about the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is integrative health, blending the Western and more of the holistic approaches. And I thought I gravitate to that. I gravitate to more of a holistic way of being, holistically speaking. And I
There you
thought,
go.
where can I level this up? Because I'm a girl that came from a home with a dad that wasn't well. And I knew that I wanted to live my life well. I dealt with a lot of stress. I mean, being a journalist, I covered a number of different events over my time as an actual journalist, from 9/11 to even the opioid crisis and the pandemic, and was not equipped with tools to deal with certain stresses, the secondary traumatic stresses we go through, the upsets we go through, the everyday stresses, and even maybe some of the deep rooted traumas. How do I help myself live well? And havening is the technique I use. I'm a certified havening techniques practitioner and now trainer. So I train others to get certified in this modality. It kind of fell in my lap, much like IAN, like life is a falling into. And it was one of those situations where I was meeting friends for a birthday party in New York City and met the COO of havening. And she's like, "May I show you what this is?" And I said, "Absolutely. I'd love to know what this is that you're doing." And she asked permission to just touch me in the way that they do in the havening world, which is basically a very simple touch, like you're washing your hands, or giving yourself a gentle touch from your shoulders down to your elbows, or even on your face. And these three touches, when you pair it with a pleasant distraction, is neuroscience based. It alters your thoughts, moods, behaviors, and habits. It puts your brain in what they produces more of delta waves, which is your slowest moving brain waves. We produce many different brain waves, but when you produce more delta, it creates a sense of calm. And when you're in the chaos, it's very hard to find the calm. And we call it CPR for the amygdala, because the
Wow.
amygdala
I
is
love that.
designed. Isn't that great? It's designed to keep
Yeah.
us safe. It's doing its job. When I have clients that tell me, it's, what's wrong with me? I'm like, nothing's wrong with you. Your brain is working exactly how it should to keep you safe and alive. So it's a safe haven. You're creating a safe haven, because havening is a transitive verb for the word haven, a safe place. Kirsten, we create safe places around us, right? Your home, the neighborhood you live in, the car you drive, but we rarely think about the one piece of real estate we really own, which is right up here, And so it's really imperative that we create that safe haven, and havening allows you to do that.
So exactly what are you doing when we call it having? You're having, right? Is somebody having you? Are
You're
you being
havening.
haved? You're havening.
It's a great question. So it's havening. And
Okay.
havening can actually be something that you can self-apply to self-soothe and self-regulate for self-care. So if you were to self-haven for everyday upsets, which is great for the everyday stresses, if you can't sleep at night, I mean, I have sleep apnea and I use it to help me fall asleep.
Wow.
When you have brain fog, when you need clarity, I actually have a number of students that are performance students, or when I was teaching a professor at St. John's University, I would use it with my classes as well to bring down those stresses that come into the everyday. And you can self-haven by just doing a little self-regulation, which is like you're washing your hands. We can even do it together. Or give yourself a gentle hug from your shoulders down to your elbows, that nurturing touch, or even gently on your face like you're doing a facial. And when you do any of these three touches and you pair it with a positive thought, a pleasant distraction, just something that brings you peace and calm and joy. It can be as simple as counting to 20 or the alphabet, singing a song, because that activates the vagus nerve, or even like closing your eyes and thinking of a really great vacation or somewhere that you've been, that just like lying on a hammock somewhere. And when you do that and just give yourself some time to do some of the self-havening, you are rewiring your brain. You are sending signals to your brain and creating new neural pathways to produce more of those delta waves and release oxytocin, which is the love hormone, serotonin, and dopamine, the happy hormones, and GABA. And when you do that, you are bringing yourself to that sense of calm. That is the CPR for the amygdala. Now, if you're working on deeper work, like myself, I'm trauma informed, so I do a lot of trauma work. Havening also has the ability to de-encode trauma rapidly and many times permanently. And when you're working with a certified practitioner like myself, you have the ability to do that. And so many people live in that world where they think, I have trauma, I'm never going to be able to get rid of it. But the idea is that when you're working with someone who can mirror back at you what you don't see in yourself in that moment, because it's very hard to be there when you're in it, you are building resiliency, because that's the main thing with havening. It's building that sense of resiliency that you can make it through another day, that you can live better optimally. And with the trauma encoding, it has the ability to de-encode it by somebody actually either doing it like you were just doing it with me. I was showing you how to do it. I was facilitating self-havening, or even with permission, actually doing havening on the person, so they can just sit back and be in the moment and see the power of this work.
So is it, because when you're talking about the movements that you're doing, I can see the benefit from having it done to you as opposed to doing it yourself. Is it similar to like what we do with massage? How is it different from just like a touch therapy?
That's a great question. So with havening being a neuroscience approach, it's been studied, and we've found that there are certain areas of the body that actually produce more delta waves, being those 3 areas. Like it could be up to 90 times as much. And delta waves, they are measured in megahertz, right? So it's producing 90 times more of those megahertz where it is producing those delta waves. When you produce more delta waves, you have that ability to, and when you're pairing it, that's what really makes it the havening. It's not just the touch, it's pairing it with a pleasant distraction, a positive thought. So like, and see, your amygdala doesn't know time or space. That's the big thing. Your amygdala has no clue about time or space. So if you're thinking about a little fender bender that happened down the street, maybe you weren't even involved in it. Maybe it didn't even really happen. You're just thinking, I hope that's a safe place to pass through when I'm driving. Your amygdala just instantly gets a signal, because it actually works faster than your cortex, which is your thinking brain. It instantly thinks it's in danger. So it's up to you to do that CPR for the amygdala, to bring yourself back down, to remind it, this isn't happening. And if it did happen and something did happen, it's an ED. It happened. It's not happening now. So the idea is that you're reeling things back, and you're creating all of these new neural pathways, because I can get all nerdy with the neuroscience, but what you're doing is you're pretty much creating a blocker. So another really great way of looking at it is like, if you remember the Jack in the Boxes when we were a kid?
Yes.
Like when you click like that, right? Everybody knows a Jack in the Box, right? The perfect example of this is like, when you're turning that same song, no matter where you are, Jack pops out on Pop Goes the Weasel, right? And what happens when that happens? Like, tell me what happens. What happens to your body?
There's a rush of excitement, happy, surprise,
right? You might jump back, right? So the idea is to jump back because something's startling you. You might not be really scared of it, but it's just a reaction. That's how the physiology of your body. What havening is almost like those little wire cutters that spring that Jack's little head is on. It's cutting that wire so that, yes, the next time you might turn that little Jack in the Box handle, the door still opens, Jack is still there, but he doesn't pop out at you in such a fashion that causes you to feel startled or threatened. So you're eliminating that aspect. You're pretty much creating like a blocker from the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn that comes in. That's where havening differs.
Let's go back to the amygdala. And by the way, nerding out on neuroscience could be the alternate title for stressed, because I love it. This whole podcast, my books and everything came out of, I truly should have gone to medical school, although no, I shouldn't, because I don't like blood. But I love all of this to figure out how our bodies work. So I wanted to have a place where we could kind of nerd out, and then also dumb it down for those of us who aren't
and share it in a way that's more simplistic. Look, I had to learn about it that way. Like when I went to my 2-day course, I always loved science, but I wasn't so great at science and math. But I get nerdy about, how does the brain work? Why do people do what they do? And that's what kind of got me into it. Girl, I was a journalist for years. I was listening to stories, wondering why people do what they do, being in the arts and theater for years as well. Somehow this gal took a major pivot into the world of neuroscience, but I love it because once you understand it, it's like this beautiful movie and dance that's going on in your mind, constantly creating new narratives. And we only in the last 25 years realize that our brain can change, that there's neuroplasticity, right? Before 25 years ago, and that's not long ago, we thought the
No, it's
brain
not.
stopped developing at a certain age and that's the way it is. But here we are now being able to like create this new movie, be the director of our minds and change everything that's going on to live resiliently. So yeah, I nerd out on that a
So
lot.
following that line of reasoning, then when people say that, oh, people don't change or I can't change, I hear this a lot from my clients when I'm health coaching. I'm the type of person who, like, I'm always going to be blank, and I always question those comments, because from what you're saying is that we can change, and it really is up to training our brains.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes it's really hard when you're in it, right? Like when you're dealing with upset, when you're dealing with overwhelm, not just stress, but when you're feeling threatened and you're feeling like, how can this possibly change? This is the hand that's been dealt to me. But what I always say, and this is really part of my hug it out method, is that in order for you to change at all, there first has to be an awareness that a change is happening. And when you come and you say, something doesn't feel right in my body, that's your first step in resiliency, to
Mm-hmm.
say, wow, okay, something doesn't feel right. I need help or support because maybe I can't do this on my own. And certainly I never advise anyone to do trauma work on their own, right? But
No.
some even deeper stresses and upsets need support and guidance. You know, sometimes you just need somebody to be that guide, somebody to be there to help you see things that you don't see in yourself in the moment. So the awareness is the first step. And then the second step is allowing yourself to look into the possibility of change. What can I do differently here? Who can I find to support me? How can I move forward with this? I realize that this is an upset. Now I'm allowing myself and giving myself permission to change and live better. And then it's aligning. So it's a AAA thing: the awareness, the allowing, and the aligning. And the aligning is when you find somebody like yourself or myself that can help you along with that process, whatever it might be for you. There are so many people out there doing good work that want to step up and help you, like yourself, like me. There are the health coaching world has grown by leaps and bounds, and it's finding someone who's
Yes.
authentic and lives their purpose and lives with authenticity to truly it's the fastest growing industry now. And so not just the coaching, but as a practitioner, it's never about competition because somebody's going to align with somebody, right? We're here as a collective to help each other as a community. So find the person that helps you, you know. So I think that's the big thing about the work that we're doing, and being able to use the digital age just allows us to
Mm-hmm.
reach across oceans. I mean, most of my clients, I became a better practitioner because of the pandemic. I got to be honest, because it
Wow.
wasn't just seeing people in person anymore. It was really watching the physiology, the expressions, the body language, and letting people know that you're not stuck just in your zip code. You can reach out to somebody that might align with you, that could be in Pennsylvania or New Jersey or London or wherever they might be. So there's possibilities, you know?
No, people often question whether or not, health coaching, oh, you're competing with doctors, and that could not be farther from the truth.
Mm,
We are here to support you with your doctor. When you have all of these doctors and
that's right.
practitioners for different chronic illnesses or issues that you might have,
Mhm.
and they only get 10-15 minutes a year to talk to you, or every time that you go in, having a health coach to kind of put all those pieces together, to give you 60 or 90 minutes at a time to really dive in, to see what the childhood trauma is that's influencing the pain that you might have in your hip or your shoulder. I believe there should be as many health coaches as doctors, because every doctor should have health coaches that work with them to make them better doctors and allow their patients to have more time to speak.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, because doctors will be the first to tell you, and I've had many of them on my show, holistically speaking, they don't go to school for nutritional training. You know, when
Mm-mm.
IAN first started as like the largest nutrition school in the world, and now they've grown by leaps and bounds because Deepak Chopra is the chief medical officer in charge. They will tell you that they don't get nutrition training. It's almost like you have a choice of taking an elective. And now we're seeing more doctors going into functional medicine and getting more integrative medicine background. And that's great. Those are the doctors I choose to work with, not only to use myself for my health, but also those that refer to me. And believe it or not, the two doctors that co-developed Havening, one is a Harvard-trained internist, and one is a dental surgeon, and they're twins. And Dr. Ron and Steve Rudin, give them a shout out because they are just mentors in my world, in my life, and I love training with them. They are the kind of doctors that I love to work with because I realize that there is something that we do that can support people because they can't do it all. They can't learn it all. You know, they have specialties, but what can you do to support somebody as a health coach? You have a niche, I have a niche, and it gives people the ability to know that there's somebody else that can provide that time and support and be the liaison between the doctor and the client. And you know, I do that with a number of different clinics too. I work with a clinic up in Chicago, a women's health clinic, and we're even seeing more women's health clinics that are looking for holistic coaches, integrative wellness coaches to work with them because they can't even do it all. So I do more of the somatic. I provide the havening and the breath work and all that to give them something to deal with the stress and the overwhelm of the everyday.
Let's go back to the amygdala, our friend, the amygdala.
Yay!
So amygdala, when you're up in that space, that can actually be detrimental to you though, all the time. Am I correct in saying that? Like we're holding our stress up there.
So your amygdala, we call her Amy in the world of havening because the first three letters of the amygdala. You can call her whatever you want, but Amy is basically a paired system on both sides of your brain. I know, it's cute. I mean, when you think about it that way, and I'll share with you why that I love using her nickname. It's a paired system on both sides of your brain in your limbic system. And you have a number of different areas of your brain that have different functions. Like you have your cortex, which is your thinking brain. You have your thalamus. And if you look at them in different ways, like your hippocampus, but the amygdala is designed like a security system. I guess that's the best way to put it. Like if you have a ring system in your home, it detects danger at the door, right? If you have an alarm system in any way, it detects danger. Your amygdala is designed to keep you alive and safe. That's it. That's its function. And if you're feeling threatened by something, it's doing its job, right? It's up to us to remind the amygdala, you're okay, you're safe, you're not in danger. And that's where havening can come in because it's allowing you to take that step back. It's allowing you to produce more of those delta waves and release things like the oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, which bring you down instead of more cortisol and adrenaline and things that tend to stress you out more. So it is de-stressing you, but then in the same right, it's also de-encoding. So it's building that resiliency and just letting Amy know you're okay, right? Like if a child takes a fall, and I know you're an amazing mom, so you'll get this. Okay. When a child takes a fall, what's the first thing you're going to do when your little one takes a fall or you have done? What do you do?
Comfort them. Run to them, comfort them, make sure everything's okay.
Up. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. You pick them up, you hug them, you say, it's okay. Because a lot of times they trip and fall and they just start crying for no reason because they feel threatened. They don't have fully developed brains. So it's almost like that. Like Amy, treat it like something that you're nurturing, that you're reminding you're okay. Build a relationship with your amygdala. Let your amygdala know you're okay. And when you do that, and with the havening, by self-soothing, by bringing all of those beautiful, happy hormones, I call it brain candy. That's the term I use for all those great hormones. You're building that beautiful relationship with the amygdala to remind yourself all is well. It's okay. And taking a step back and slowing your roll a little bit, right? Because you're not really giving yourself time to think when you're in danger. That's up to the cortex, but the cortex actually reacts slower than the amygdala. So the amygdala is like, get out of the way, cortex. I'll make a decision right now. It's like that friend that's just impulsive, right? Where you're like, well, let's think about this for a second. So it's slowing things down a little bit and not being so reactionary. Like if you had a an alarm system that every time something goes by, like a leaf blows by, it goes off, rather than if you tone it down a little bit, it might be more receptive if maybe somebody's coming to the door. Does that make sense?
It does. It sounds like it is havening and working this in your brain is a way to get you to slow down, to rest, to go from stress to rest.
Yeah, absolutely. Because releasing more of those delta waves, which delta is sleep wave state. When you're in deep sleep, you're in delta. There's no slower brain wave than delta. We live up in the high gamma wave world a lot. That's where we're laser focused, doing things. It's the do world. Delta's more like BBB, right? When you're producing more of those, sense of calm, being able to take a breath, maybe being able to like process some things a little differently, you're in deep sleep state. And not that havening's putting you into a sleep state like if you're in like hypnosis. And I'm also I'm certified in hypnosis as well. I'll use elements of that, but I really find that havening by itself can be so powerful. And being able to give people the tools to do it, like they don't have to rely on being with their practitioner. It's the time between the bookends that really matters. And I'm sure you know this as a coach as well, that yes, we show up for them and we're providing time and space to work with them, but it's the tasks we give them. It's the challenges we give them outside of the hour they might spend with us that really matters and builds the resiliency, you know, that they realize,
So
wow, I can do this myself.
how much time does it take to probably master isn't the right word because we're all humans that are practicing. Nobody ever won for being best human.
Yeah.
How often should you do this? And then once you've kind of learned the techniques and you're working with somebody like you, Hilary, at home, do you do it when you feel yourself, rushing into fight or flight, when you're super stressed out? Can you do it multiple times a day? Is it, I find one session in the afternoon and that's what I do. How does that work?
I do it a lot and often, and there's no amount of time that all the time. Like I'll be honest, the first thing I do before I put my feet on the floor in the morning is I do 2 minutes of gratitude. And this goes back to a Harvard research study that I use a lot when I'm speaking, doing talks, podcasts on the stage, and even as part of my Hug It Out program. There's a Harvard research study that shows that if you do 2 minutes of gratitude in the morning compared to 3 minutes of grabbing your phone or quickly jumping out of bed and do, you have a 27% more likelihood of having a good day 6 to 8 hours later. And what I do in the morning is before I put my feet on the floor, and this is part of my Hug It Out program, it's the gratitude. I sit there and I have gratitude for the things that I'm bringing to the world. Like, what is it about Hilary? What do I offer? I am grateful that I got 8 hours of sleep and I chose to rest. I'm grateful that I am sharing the knowledge and the neuroscience behind a beautiful technique that can help people live better. I'm grateful that I've made a choice to do X, Y, or Z, whatever it might be. And I sit there and I haven in my bed before I even put my feet on the floor. I do it at night before I go to bed. As I mentioned, I have sleep apnea, so it's been very helpful with that. And I do it during the day. When I have moments like, and you're an author, so you know this. I'm in the process of writing my book, and sometimes we get writer's block. Oh, thank you. I'm very excited. I actually won honorable mention with Hay House. So I'm very excited. It's given me more fuel to finish the book. Yeah. So
Great.
I'm on this route, but sometimes I get writer's block, and I'm a writer.
Yeah.
I love writing, but I'll sit there and I'll take a step back and I'll be like, all right, Hill, like I'll just do a little havening. Maybe I count to 20. Maybe I sing a song. Maybe I just step away from the computer for a few minutes and I count the cars going by, or I think about a great vacation, or I think about the outcome of the book being published. Right. And that resets things. So it can be used anywhere and anytime. I have a dentist appointment coming up. Not so keen about sitting in the dental chair. I will sit there and I will haven while I'm in the dental chair. So there's no way you can't use this. And it is going to be that tool that you can put in your little toolbox and use at any time, anywhere. So that's really a big part of, like, I think gratitude is a huge part of everything.
Absolutely. Having a gratitude practice is so, so important. First thing in the morning,
Hmm.
before you go to bed. I love that study.
Yes.
Tell us again, in case anybody missed it, what is the statistic through Harvard University about having a gratitude practice?
So this was actually in the book The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. He's a
Hmm.
Harvard research reviewer, and
Yeah.
I think I first heard about this when I read the book, but the study, as I remember, is if you start your day with 2 minutes of gratitude compared to 3 minutes of just grabbing your phone or getting up and just doing, and like starting your day just like in that do instead of just be, like being present in the gratitude, it's 27% more likelihood. They did the study with a number of people that they found that 6 to 8 hours later, they were having a better day, a good day, a happier day,
It's great.
because they started it with gratitude. And so, like, I really implemented that into my Hug It Out method, which is in the healing. And this is an acronym. In the healing, you have to have the humor. Maybe in the moment when you're going through something, you don't feel the humor in the situation, right? We've been through stuff where the stuff doesn't feel so good in the moment, but later when you have time to think about it and process it and see the lesson that comes from it, you see the humor. You can sit back and laugh at the little things that sometimes we make to be really big, right? Then you have the understanding, and the understanding in the you is that's the H, that's you. And the understanding is who we are and how we're showing up in the world. What are your core values? What do you stand for? How do you want to be seen when you walk in the room? What is your walk-in song kind of thing, right? What is your entry
Hmm.
song in the world? And then the G is the gratitude with a big exclamation point at the end, because that really seals the deal. So when you come from a place of humor, understanding, and gratitude, when you hug it out with yourself, because we spend a lot of time making amends with other people. Oh, you guys just hug it out. Oh, just, hug it out. Just get over it, move forward. We hear that a lot, that term hug it out. But when's the last time you've hugged it out with yourself? When you stand there in your witness and give yourself permission to heal. We all have that human, that is a human right to be able to heal. And nobody's healing you. We might be supporting you as coaches and practitioners and doctors and whatnot, but you're really doing the work yourself and taking that bold step to have the awareness that a change needs to happen, you know?
Humor, understanding, and gratitude. I love it. Hug. That's great. Everybody can remember that.
Yeah.
That's something to write down right this very
Mm-hmm.
second. Who can havening benefit? I mean, I'm sure everybody could use it, but are there certain groups of people, like they've had this happen or they are this, that this would be really, really great for?
I got to be honest, I would love to see this more in schools. And we're actually seeing that more people are using it in the school system. I think there are about 10,000 schools that have been implementing it, whether there's certified practitioners in the school, just giving kids tools to learn more social emotional learning is great. And for me, like the area that I've been really focusing on is those who are first responders,
Mm,
journalists, somebody who didn't have those tools when I was a journalist in the field, and coming from a background in the military, myself, I was a military wife for a number of years, seeing these tools being used when people are facing some really major upsets. So for me, what I've noticed and who I've started training are people more in the first responder world, military, and also those who are supporting children, teachers. Some of my trainings I've seen, former fire chiefs, doctors, and just knowing that they're bringing this into their practice so that they can help their clients. But when it comes to self-regulating, anyone can use this. Anyone can use this for themselves. So there really is no demographic that's off this list. I just think when we think about being able to use it for kids, we're putting the tools in their hands to be like well-rounded, self-regulated, powerful adults. Like, where were those tools when we were younger? Right?
absolutely.
Because I think about like when a kid did something wrong when we were younger, go to detention, go to your room, think about what you did. There never in the history of think about what you did any kid ever go up to the room and think about what they did,
Think about what they
right?
did.
Right. They think about how they got caught, right?
Yeah.
And we got to understand like these are developing brains. So if we give tools to children to self-regulate for self-care, how wonderful will that be? And I love working with kids to see how they
And
just
all
bring it
of
into their
those
space.
those things that we told kids to do are separation techniques, which now we
That's right.
know is, and especially as a mom of two adopted children, one biological, but two adopted as well. The separation is never that's, oh, you get in trouble and you are unloved and I'm pushing you away, as
Yeah.
opposed to connection. And you know, every generation has their stuff, but I do feel when it comes to brain rewiring, this generation, their brains are being rewired so much more than our generation was. So they need it even more than we do, most likely.
Absolutely. They're still developing. So imagine you're creating these neural pathways as they get older, and they're building these stronger neural pathways and resiliency to be
Mm-hmm.
well-rounded adults, to be more compassionate and empathetic. And you know what? More self-care, more self-worth, more self-talk that's positive. Our brain is wired to go to the negative. The amygdala is wired to be like, tell me the shortest route, give me the ways, tell me how to get there faster. It's a lazy brain. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
your brain is lazy or my brain is, it's everyone's brain is lazy, but it gets stronger and more patient when we're creating these new neural pathways. So if we do that at a young age, imagine that the resiliency of a child moving into adulthood when they know how to self-regulate. We didn't know the term self-regulate when we were younger.
No.
Like I didn't
Or
know what that was.
resilience.
Right, right. I
Right.
mean, we might have known about taking yoga classes. Look, there's wonderful things to be able to add to your little brain candy jar that can help you, whether it's taking a walk, journaling, going to yoga, working out. These are all fabulous things. But rewiring wise, having things like the havening technique in your pocket to use it anywhere, anytime. It's portable, as we say.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's portable. You can put it in your pocket. Many of the terms we even use in QVC, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
portable. So like you can take it with you anywhere. So being able to use it, and even when you're in a situation, like I think about as a former journalist or full-time journalist, I still do health journalism, but even in that field, when you're dealing with the stresses of somebody else's trauma, you could be dealing with vicarious trauma, secondary trauma, compassion fatigue. Doctors deal with this all the time. When I speak in front of doctors, that's the one thing they say. It's like they never give themselves time. Even if you're walking from patient to patient, door to door, being able to just reset and do a little havening could be all you need. And we've seen how this is effective in helping people or the military or first responders, anything like that. There's really no group that can't benefit from this, and no human being that can't benefit from this. By the way, it can also be used with animals. So I can't even say human being.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it can.
Right. Wow.
Mhm.
I do believe we all need this, and I'm not sure why we haven't all heard about this in the past, because it seems like a fantastic technique, and I'm so excited that we're talking about it. When I talk about the precipice for me to be here where I am right now,
Yeah.
doing this podcast, writing books, speaking on stages, helping clients, it came from my mother, who I lost early to dementia. And when I speak about her, I always say she was a self-professed stress case. She was always stressed out and she was always worried. And I get the question from clients that I work with and others as well. Do you think some people are more prone to stress than others? Or does this come from childhood trauma and the traumas? Or is there a mix of the two? Or do you have a different answer that I'm not even thinking of?
I think you hit the nail on the head with either. I mean, it could be anything. And it's not like you're ever going to really know somebody's full story just from that first time meeting with them. I mean, the one thing about havening, I will say, is that it is one of those approaches where very different from psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is talk therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Psychopharmacology is using pharmaceuticals for your well-being. Psychosensory is what havening is. And that's a term that was created by Dr. Ron Rudin, which means that somebody, if you walked into a session with me and you told me nothing and you just said, I just want to do some havening, I'd be like, all right, girlfriend, let's do it. You wouldn't even have to tell me anything. It could be completely content free. It could be content rich, meaning you open up and share with me, with which most of my clients do, because it builds a trust and a connection. They feel like they're in a safe place. Or it can be minimal content. So it's really being the detective of your own mind and digging deeper and taking a step back and realizing, why do I react this way? Again, that goes back to the awareness. why am I feeling like this, but it doesn't feel good in my body? And really becoming the detective of your own self, but also having somebody support you that can also be a detective, that can maybe, like I said earlier, mirror back what you don't see in yourself in a moment because you're not in the narrative, right? Somebody like
Mm-hmm.
myself can sit there and listen and listen for clues that could potentially help that person uncover their own message that they've been telling themselves, that belief system, right? Why do they believe that? Is that based off of an event that happened that's causing them to feel this way, whether it happened in childhood or later in life? Or is it something that they just started believing on their own? There's no cookie cutter way. It's really treating each person differently, treating them meaning you're showing up for them differently. And no two people are the same. As we learned in the world of IAN, it's bio individuality, right?
Yes, it
So that
is.
term is like no two people are the same. They could have the same condition, but how did they get to that condition? Whether it's mind, body, or spirit, you know? So I think that's a big thing, is being the detective. And because it could be any of those, it can be trauma or it might not be trauma, you know?
Let's go back to, you have sleep apnea.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing and being vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep is a big, big thing that we talk about in this podcast. And it's one of the biggest things that I work with people. I always find that no matter what they come to me for, we have to fix as much as we can. Fix, you never really fix, but have to practice and work on sleep and stress first. How, as somebody in this space, you have one of the hardest conditions on sleep. How do you manage that?
And one of the most popular, as we're seeing, especially as
Yes.
women moving into their menopausal years, it's becoming more common. More insurance companies are covering it now because we're seeing it as a real issue. How do I deal with it? Well, first, I think something I learned about a year or two ago was what gets measured gets managed. That was a term that was used
It's
when I was in
great.
conversation. Yeah, when I was in conversation talking with a sleep expert about it, it made perfect sense to me. I could avoid this and just like deal with whatever, not even knowing. I did not even think I had sleep apnea. Like labeling it is one thing. But what do I do now that I have that knowledge? But my sleep apnea, and I'm still in the process of learning what to do with this, now that I know I have it, what's the next step? And for me, I also had major jaw surgery when I was 15 years old, major
That's right.
reconstructive jaw surgery. And if this is a trigger for anyone, just know that you can always just click pause for a second or whatnot. I certainly don't want to trigger anyone, but I had major reconstructive surgery that was due to temporomandibular joint disorder. And the way they did the surgery back then is very different from what they do now. In fact, they don't even do the surgery as much as they did then. It was almost like, we're just going to do this because that's what we know. And that's the way medicine grows and we learn, this medicine evolves. But I had the surgery, and what they did was they took away part of my airway by setting my jaw back. It's almost like, we're
Wow.
going to make your garage smaller for the Cadillac that's in your mouth. Right? Like the tongue. So we're seeing the connection between dentistry and airway health now. We didn't do that back in the day. And now that has caused some issues with my breathing. So how I go forward now is, the next step is having certain tests done, seeing how I need to be supported, not necessarily always having to think, people always think CPAP, right? It might not be that, but I'm still in process of finding out what the solution is. And there is a solution, but it's being open to finding that solution. I will say I've learned how to, just sleep better using certain, like a sleep device just for sound, or sleeping on my side, or just making my home more evening focused, because we live with these bright lights, right? We
So
live with
true.
technology. I don't even have a TV in my room, and I try to keep technology away from me because we're constantly activated, and it's bringing myself down so that I can sleep well. And of course, implementing havening into my evening routine.
Wow.
Every
That's so
person's
great. Yeah.
different. Yeah.
No TVs here either. That's one of the things that I always talk about, getting those electronics as far away as
Mm-hmm.
possible. What about supplements or a nighttime ritual other
Yeah.
than havening?
So I love melatonin. I do have a nice cup of like decaffeinated tea in the evening
Tea, yeah.
because that's always nice. Tea is always a nice way to kind of bring yourself down, the warmth in your body. Sometimes I'll take melatonin, not all the time though. I find that just honestly, when I have a cup of tea, when I do some deep somatic breathing, when I do havening, that tends to be enough. The havening definitely is my go-to. I choose not to have to ingest anything if I don't have to. But if I need extra support, I know that I can always rely on some melatonin. But normally I'm really using what I have, the tools that I have that are in my own hands.
On that note, are there supplements that you regularly take, not necessarily for sleep, just or health or health practices that as a health coach, as somebody in the wellness space that you always go
Yeah.
to?
I think having a multivitamin as we get to this age. I mean, I'm in my 50s now. I'm in menopause or actually past that stage. So for me, it's listening to my body, and I know that having a multivitamin is helpful. Vitamin D. Also just I'm a big fan of just eating foods that are anti-inflammatory foods because that'll keep you up at night for me
Yes, so
personally.
true.
Right. And sugars, so the things that I take mainly are the multivitamin, vitamin D. And I don't take a lot, I don't really do a lot. Sometimes I have supplements on the side that will be something I can take if I need to. But, I've been really fortunate that I have not been requested by my integrative doctors to have a need, except for the multivitamin. I think is a really important thing because we're missing certain things as we get older, you know.
Absolutely.
I'm open to possibilities though. We hear a lot about different kinds of like hormone replacement therapy, and I'm always learning. I think we're constantly learning in what we're doing. But just because one person does something doesn't mean another person does something,
I
you
say that
know?
all the time. People are always like, "Okay, what are your top 3 supplements?" And, the most asked question I think from everybody is, "Tell me what you eat in a day." And I
Right.
always say, just because I take this doesn't mean you should. Just because
That's
this is how
right.
I eat doesn't mean it's how you should. And it's the same when somebody comes to you and I just want to talk to you for 20 minutes and ask you questions. I was like, what we really need are a couple sessions to dive into you before I can help you get to where you should be because we're all different.
Right. Like that initial session is really a connection and learning with a person. And it's one of the reasons why, like, especially because most people don't know what havening is when we're speaking just about havening, that I
Mhm.
offer like a mini session. I want you to come in and see if this is right for you before you're buying into
Right.
something.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to give people the possibility. But I also have a health history. I want them to take an intake form so that I
Yes.
learn a little bit about them before they walk in the room with me. I'm not like, oh, hey, what's going on? I don't know anything about you. Tell me what's going on with you. Let's fill all this time with those questions. I think that builds the initial trust. And trust is so important and connection is so important when you are really holding space for somebody, sometimes on very vulnerable and intimate topics. And I always want to create that safe space so that when they are working with me, and I know you've got that same kind of like, that's why we vibe. That same kind of it is. I mean, you
Yeah, it is.
align
You're
with
right.
people who are very much like who you are. We want to create that safe space. And once they're in that space and they're building a connection and they know that they're supported, then we can really go into things. Because what happens one day in session, I get this question a lot too. What's a typical session like? And
Yeah.
there's no typical. You can come and see me twice and it's not the same session. What's coming up for you? What's the presenting issue in that moment? Once we take a deep dive and get into it, maybe that presenting issue that you brought at the top 3 minutes of coming into my space might be different from what it is 45 minutes later. So it's really meeting your clients where they're at and being that detective, but also being that support system for them.
What other practices? I know you've mentioned breathing a couple of times during
Mm,
this podcast. Maybe that's it. But what other practices do you recommend, or maybe you use for yourself when it comes to
mm.
reducing the bad stress?
Breath work is so important. I do pranayama breathing all the time myself, and I bring it into my practice with my clients. We forget to breathe. We
Yeah.
breathe perfectly the minute we are brought into this world. It's the minute we come out of the womb that we start breathing wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the stresses in the everyday and the environment, and I have to learn that too, as someone who has the sleep apnea and TMJ. I breathe differently because my airway is different. So pranayama breathing has been really helpful for me, and that's the breathing in on the 4, holding it for 7, and breathing out on 8. And that's like rest and repair. We want to spend more time in parasympathetic nervous system than nervous system, because that's rest and repair. We spend more time in our sympathetic,
Fight or
right?
flight. Right.
Fight or flight. So bringing myself to a place of where I'm just getting back to breath can be very helpful. Even if it's just 3 rounds of it, can be very helpful. And that's something I really enjoy doing. And I've taken a lot of breath workshops and found that that's where I really deeply connect, because getting in touch with breath is getting in touch with source. It's getting in touch with center. It's getting in touch with self. And once you're doing that, really going to the core of who you are, it's the fuel in your body. That's the true fuel, is breath. Without breath, you don't stand a chance.
Right.
Right? So
And
that's the true
what
fuel.
Hilary is talking about is, you might think, oh, I want to be in the sympathetic nervous system. Fight or flight's great. I get stuff done. I'm moving and shaking. But for those of you who are perimenopausal or menopausal, or just anybody, women specifically, that is where your cortisol is overacting. And that's not what we want, because that leads to a myriad of the problems that we've talked about, heart disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, obesity, belly fat, dementia, all of those things. So we're trying to get you into parasympathetic, and the breath work can help with that. One of the ones that I use with people is 2 quick inhales in and then a long exhale out. And
Right.
these are techniques, just reminding yourself to breathe when your mind is racing, when you're spinning, when you're in the overwhelm.
Absolutely. I love that technique as well. I use that as well.
Yeah.
That's in my little brain candy jar as well, because we do forget to breathe. And it's just a reminder to bring us back to center. And it begins with breath and it ends with breath, period. So
Yeah.
it's what you do between the bookends that matters. Like having different techniques, whether it's havening or something else that you bring into your day, is going to help you live optimally. And then having support if you need it on deeper rooted issues, obviously. But we're all we have to remember we're human beings first before we're human
We are.
doings. And when we remember that we are being first, and what it takes to fuel being, it can really change the narrative on how we show up in this world.
So before I have to let you go, I always like to, and I always end with my clients, okay, tell me 3 things that you are going to take away and that you're going to put into action, in the next week when you get off the phone with me. And some of the things that I grabbed from you that I will be writing down, might see on Instagram. Life is a falling into. I love that. And also, what gets measured gets managed, which is fantastic. A couple of minutes first thing in the morning doing a gratitude practice. And I will add to that, and people who've been following me for a long time are going to roll their eyes at me again because I say it all the time, but sun before screens. So not looking at your phone first, but going outside and getting sun, walking outside, or if you don't have sun because it's early in the morning, get in front of a SAD light, seasonal affective disorder light. Do something before you look at your phone. Don't roll over and look at your phone. And a gratitude practice is a great thing to do.
Love that, sun before screen. Yeah, we're
Yeah, that's a
learning
good
from
one.
each other. The things that
That's the
I
whole
share all the time.
point.
It is. I mean, we might have our things, we might have our trademarks, we might have our sayings, we might have the titles of our book, all these things. But when it comes to it, like, the whole point is that we're sharing it, right?
Yeah.
It's just reminding each other that we're here to help one another out. Yeah, we're here to be each
So
other's guides.
one short, quick takeaway that you can give everybody that they could do right now, today, when they get out of this podcast or in the car, wherever they are, to help reduce their stress. What is it?
Absolutely. Try self-havening. It is so easy. Take a step back, take some deep breaths, breathe in for a moment, and then just connect yourself to center. And what I invite you to do is put on your phone, or write it down, or think about some positive thoughts, pleasant distractions that are so easy for you to go to, whether it is your favorite vacation or a place that's your respite, something that brings you peace and calm and joy. Or even if you don't have a very good visualization sense, like some people can't visualize, just count to 20 or the alphabet or sing a song. Have that, and then try havening with it. All you have to do is just remember, it's like you're washing your hands gently, or giving yourself a hug from your shoulders down to your elbows, gently and softly, or even on your face, like you're just putting some moisturizer on, or you can even cross your hands, because that actually feels like someone's touching your face. When you use this havening touch and continue using the touch, whichever way you want to do it, it could be hands, arms, face, or all three, no choreography. Pair that with that pleasant distraction or positive thought, and just give yourself a chance to be kind to your mind and see how you feel. Maybe even give yourself a number to start with. Maybe on a scale of 0 to 10, you're on what we call the subjective unit of distress, right? This is the SUD scale. If you're at like a 5 and you're feeling anxious, stop, be witness to that. Park it for a moment, because you're not staying in it. Give yourself a chance to take yourself somewhere else, do a little havening. And then when you're done, check in again and see where that number is. Maybe it's lower. Maybe now you're at a 0 and your word is peace. See how easy it is to implement havening into your everyday, and then reach out to me and we can have a bigger conversation about it. I'd love that. You have the ability to change your thoughts, moods, behaviors, and habits.
And be kind to your mind. That's one of
your
your taglines too, which I love. Where can people find you? How should they find you and follow you?
Wonderful. Thank you for asking. You can find me on my website at hilaryrusso.com. It's 1 L, 2 S's. You can also find me online. I'm all over social media. Same thing, at Hilary Russo. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. I love connecting with people on social. And I have havening happy hours every month for free. So you can try it out with me guiding you during that experience. So if you go to hilaryrusso.com under events, you'll see when the next one is coming up. Or even if you're interested, come. I'd love to have you.
I need to be in one of those. I love a havening happy hour. It's fantastic. That sounds great.
It's a wonderful time to just connect with other people, and for us as a collective to be kind to the mind and hug it out.
Great. Okay, well, next time I see you at the queue, if we run into each other, I'll be doing the hands and the arms. And then I'm actually going to give you a hug as well, because it would be great to see you in person.
I am the chief of hugs, and I would love that more than anything. I live for hugs. That would be awesome. I'd love to see you.
Don't forget to listen to our podcast too, Holistically Speaking, which is absolutely fantastic. And all of that will be linked in the show notes. I can't thank you enough for being here. Thank you, friend.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up on the next episode of Stressed, I get to sit down with Candace Cameron Bure. I met Candace when she brought her lifestyle brand to QVC. She's been living out faith, family, and fitness longer than any other celebrity in Hollywood. We talk about how she stays grounded in faith in a very secular world, and she will share her most stressful times of life and what has helped her thrive. Don't miss it. Thank you for joining me on this journey to reduce stress and make room for rest. Remember, you're not alone. Keep coming back, share your story, ask for help, and give yourself grace.